Yeah, because I get up every morning and I say it's going to be a great day and I choose to be happy, right? Um, a lot of people know that last August, I'm coming up to a very, 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 very difficult time in my life. I lost my middle son to suicide. And I had no freaking clue that in 3 short weeks, he'd be gone. Not in my case. It was just like phone call one morning and my life just changed like that. In my space, and I've come to find out many, many other parents' space, you get this perception that everything's wonderful until all of a sudden it's not. Where I have found my best therapy have been in conversations with other parents that have lost their children.
Welcome to Bro Talk, and it's my privilege to welcome our guest today, Mr. Rick Thomas, all the way from the US. Rick, how you doing?
Gary, it's good to see you. It's good to be on your show. This is fun.
And I'll say to you just before we start recording, you look so well. Obviously, you've got good temperature at the moment, but yeah, you clearly look after yourself.
Well, I try, it's funny. We were talking about that. I really do try that. I think it's important. I'm about to start my 66th lap around the sun later this year. And, and I feel very blessed. I live in gratitude that I have my health and, I've got a lot of good things going for me. I start every single morning, rain or shine, with my golden retriever. She and I walk about anywhere from about 6 to 9 kilometers every morning. And it's just how we start our day. And it's a great way to just kind of get your mind into things or out of things, depending on where you want to be or what you're doing. And it's good to move the body and keep going. Yesterday, I was in the water again with some friends of mine. Those that know me know I'm a technical diver, and did a really fun dive on what we call a natural wreck, a wreck that actually went down in a storm in about 52 meters of water. And, that was real too. So that's what I do to stay moving, stay active, and the health follows, I think. Don't eat that crappy food.
Excellent. And when we spoke last week, Rick, what I really took away from that short conversation was you say about how we have control over we start the day. We may not necessarily have control how the day unfolds and how it ends, but definitely how we start the day is we do have control over that. And that really resonated with me. So much so that I'm building with my wife. And we're going to be hearing lots more about Rick. And as we talk, it's a space for men to speak openly, vulnerably, and sharing, overcoming the stigma associated with mental health, and really to have honest conversations in this platform. So
that's why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Gary. And what you just touched on, I think, is so important. It sounds simple at its fundamentals, and frankly, it is simple at the fundamentals. You have to believe that it works, and that is when you get up every morning. I tell people you have two choices. You can choose to get up and be unhappy and miserable in your circumstances, or you can choose to get up and try to be happy and have the best day possible. And I've been through it, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, during the course of this conversation. But that's the one constant that I try to evoke every morning when I get up out of the bed is I live in gratitude, and I say, it's going to be a great day today. Let's just make it a great day. And people hear me say that all the time. Hey, make it a great day.
Yeah.
Because that's a choice. I really do believe that's a choice.
Right. Agree to that. So give us a bit of your background, please, Rick. So now that you're now in the yacht industry, but many years in the marine industry, as well as other fields. So please, yes, let us know.
I tell people, and it's kind of fun to say it, I can track every single dollar I've earned in my entire professional career back to the ocean. I had a love of the ocean from a very young age. I got my first sailboat when I was 11 years old. I learned to sail, and then moving up to about 15 years old, I was a huge advocate, loved watching Jacques Cousteau, the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. I was all up going, would never miss an episode. It was on TV. I got his 20 album catalog of encyclopedia that went out, and it was just my thing. And I told my parents, I want to be a diver. And they said, oh, no. There's sharks in the water. It's dangerous. And I pushed, and they pushed back. And they finally said, well, if you can figure out how to get your lessons yourself, fine. So I put an ad in the paper, and I sold my sailboat. And with the funds I got from the sailboat, I got my diving lessons. I had money left over to buy secondhand gear.
Yeah.
And I started diving. And the first instant I went underwater with a regulator in my mouth and saying, wow, I can breathe under here and it's 3-dimensional. So I can swim where I was hooked. I went to college. I got a degree in underwater technology, which is unusual. It is underwater technology from Florida Institute of Technology. And those who know, it's an amazing school. It's an incredible school. It shut down about 20 years ago, but that was in 1980, 81. And then I started my professional career in the Gulf of Mexico as a commercial diver, doing saturation diving, bell bounce diving. We were running pipelines and, doing offshore oil field work. Life happened. I was engaged. I figured if going to make this relationship work, I need to get back to Florida, move back to Florida, found out my fiance actually found somebody at the University of Florida that she liked better than me. Oops. I was young and dumb. And I started working for my dad. He was building boat lifts in Clearwater. I was helping him run his factory and learning about manufacturing. And in the process, I ran into an opportunity to start making little aluminum sailboat davits. So I started doing that. I started selling those to local sailboat manufacturers. And back in the early 80s, there's a lot of sailboat manufacturing in Florida, particularly in the west coast of Florida. And that led into building more complex and eventually starting a company called Nautical Structures that I started in 1986. I built that company, brought on a business partner. About 8 years later, we built it into really what's a legacy brand in the industry. This image behind me is a beautiful Hawkford-built boat called Scout. And right over this shoulder is a full crane that my company built for that boat. And that's an example of kind of stuff we were doing. We're also building their watertight doors and shell doors and passerelles and things like that. So those in the yachting industry know the company. I resigned from the business about 3.5 years ago, started a yacht management company, sold it, my interest in it about a year and a half ago, and went down the rabbit holes. Our good friend Rhea and started Yachting USA and then Yachting on these 2 podcasts that are training pretty well, having a lot of fun with. And that's my professional career, and mixed in amongst all of that is 2 marriages. My second marriage ended when my wife, who was born with cystic fibrosis, passed away in November of 2018. Left me the single father of 2 boys, actually, and I have a son from my first marriage. So I've had the family situation. I've gone through the divorce of the first marriage. I've gone through a bankruptcy with the first company. I've gone through a period of time where my first wife became a drug addict. She was addicted to crack cocaine, actually, and the struggles of dealing with that, trying to lovingly fix that at the same time, hold head above water. So when we sit here, Gary, and talk about having lived what I call a full catastrophe life, I think I'm an example of that. And there's so much more we can talk about. But the point is, I don't think I wasn't born with a golden spoon. I do believe that pretty much everything I've achieved and accomplished has been because of other people helping me, but me also being involved, helping myself, pushing, being motivated, doing the right thing. And I talk about doing the right thing for others. I think that's really important. But that's kind of the snapshot of Rick Thomas in the world I grew up in, the world I currently exist in.
Thank you, Rick. And what I want to pick up before we move more into your personal life is from a very young age, you appear to have known what you wanted to do. And you made, which I think is so important for anything you want to achieve in life, a sacrifice.
Yeah. Like I gave up the sailboats into diving.
Where did that come from? Did you inherit that from your parents, that discipline, that foresight? Was it saying,
I wish I knew. No, my parents were great people. My dad was a bit of a workaholic. My mom, I grew up in the 70s, and you have the family thing. Mom stayed home and raised the family. Dad went off to work every day. We went out and played all day long. There was no internet. Can you imagine that? No internet, nothing like that, no cell phones. we would leave the house in the morning. We'd go out in the woods and play. And the rule was when the street lights came on, you'd be back home, you know?
Oh, childhood.
And we were socially interacting with a lot of people all day because that's what we did to entertain ourselves. And I think it was a great time and culture to grow up in here in the United States. I'm sad that it's not so much there. But my youngest son, who is about to turn 16 in a couple of weeks, I love the fact that he's gotten so big into skateboarding. So his world is not around the internet either. He and his friends are out. They're out hours and hours and hours in the skateboard parks or at the malls on their skateboards, trying to stay out of trouble, having a great time, community, and it's the closest thing that I've seen in my life to the kind of childhood I had. And I'm so happy that he's found that.
Yeah. There's very strong work ethic based around people, not technology.
It is around people, because at the end of the day, it's people that allow us to achieve whatever we achieve. It's, and that's where I think it's really important to recognize how important your circles are for yourself. We like to think we can do it all ourselves. And if we really believe that, we're fools. We really depend on the circle of professionals and friends and loved ones that create our environment.
Mm. And talking about environments, if we're, with your permission, can we go there, Rick, regards to, as you said last week, people look at you, you're very positively outward looking, and I think, yeah, this guy's got no problems, he's got it all made.
Yeah, because I get up every morning and I say it's going to be a great day, and I choose to be happy, right? A lot of people know that last August, I'm coming up to a very, 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 very difficult time in my life. I lost my middle son to suicide. He killed himself in my oldest son's home at 4:19 in the morning with a shotgun. As brutal as that is to say, it's necessary because it's the reality I have to face 1 week after his 21st birthday. And he'd been living there for 2 years, working at Universal Studios. No signs of mental illness, no signs of issues in his life, nothing that would make anybody feel that there was something to be worried about. 3 weeks before his death, I had all three of my boys together at Universal Studios. The two of them, the two older ones, worked there. And my youngest son, Tristan, came up. He actually spent a week on summer break with his brothers at their house up in Central Florida. Then I came up at the end of his trip, and we spent 2 days together at Universal Florida. And I thought, man, how about this? I got all three of the Thomas boys together. Hasn't happened in a little while, and here I got all three of my boys. And I'll never forget, we were at this place in Universal Studio, and my oldest son, Rick, and his name's Rick, and we're going to have a beer. And Aiden was just a month away from turning 21. I said, let me go get you a beer too. He's like, no, Dad, I don't drink. I said, are you sure? He must turn 21. He's like, no. And so he went and got him. And I think back on that and I go, wow, I never had the opportunity to even share a drink with my son. And I had no freaking clue that in 3 short weeks, he'd be gone. So, there's just so many takeaways to that. And, I honestly, I have a very empty place right now. I have a lot of struggles, not really with depression. I don't think that's in it, but it certainly post-traumatic stress is happening in my world because it is, it's a grief thing that is so difficult to get your head around. And it's so important to understand because I'll have to deal with this the rest of my life. So yeah, I think it's something that is worth talking about. I sometimes wonder about the purpose of all this. And then I think to myself, well, I do have a voice and people do occasionally listen to me, what I have to say. And so perhaps this is a starting point where this is the first time I really spoke publicly since his celebration of life last September about this. And it's something that I feel that I probably should be talking more about as I get deeper into this space, understand more and more of what I'm dealing with, because where I can find therapy, what is helpful for me is talking to other parents and talking to other people that have experienced this or have come close to experiencing this. And when I hear people say the name Aiden, it doesn't hurt my feelings. It actually reminds me, and it's like he lives for a moment when I hear the name. So when people try to stay away from that topic, thinking they're being helpful, actually the opposite's probably closer to the therapy that I need. More people willing to say, "Hey, how's it going, Rick? How are you feeling about Aiden? Where are you right now?" Because I think, as both as a parent and as a human being that has suffered a catastrophic loss, and there's nothing I think more catastrophic than losing a child to suicide without any. I mean, some people maybe see warning signs or have dealt with years and years of mental health issues and attempts and stuff like that. Not in my case. It was just like phone call one morning and my life just changed like that.
Months later, Rick, not even a year has passed. I'm going to ask a classic counseling question because I believe it's relevant here, if it's okay with you.
Of course.
How does it feel saying those words?
Therapeutic.
Honestly, and I see a guy every week. I've been doing this for about 2 months now, and I love Michael and I talk for 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And it is, and that's where I realized I had it bottled up for a long time. And then I realized that my personal relationships were suffering and that I knew I was suffering, but I just didn't know how. I didn't know what. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was missing, what was wrong. Because I get out in my community, and maybe this is part of therapy too. And this is something that comes out of the therapy I'm having. So I go in the wonderful world of yachting. I go to these industry events, and people see the Rick they've always, yes, because it's hardwired in here. I have this relationship with my industry and a relationship with these people in the industry, and I can kind of go on autopilot in a way. I can show up, keep the smile on the face, and have these conversations, and then I can do this podcast I'm doing, and for a while I get lost in that, and that's taking me into a better place, I guess, a different place that I can really, do my best work. But then the cameras get turned off, the microphones get put away. You leave the event and you go home alone, and you realize that that nothing is fundamentally changed.
Yeah. And I want to speak to you as a man. We're fully aware of what's said about men that men
Yes.
don't cry, boys don't cry. And you're a dad who's lost a son in extreme tragic circumstances. You've got 2 other sons. So you men dealing with this. How did you, what was the response between the 3 of you?
A lot of grief, a lot of sharing, a lot of, reminded me that, fuck all, I better take care of my boys, right? I better pay attention to what's going on here, making sure they're okay. And it's its own interesting story, because there are 2 different grief models going on right now between the father and the brothers. And I'm just getting my head around that, which is really an interesting dynamic. But no, I took my youngest son out of school, and I'm homeschooling him now.
Okay.
I've come to the realization, and I'll say it to the day I die, that right now our governmental institutions of lower learning here in the United States do not do justice to our education system, do not educate our children well. And as a parent, I think it's incumbent upon us to stay more involved in how our children are actually educated. And so what I'm doing right now is making darn sure that Tristan is educated to the way of the world, that he can, if I were to have something catastrophic happen to me tomorrow, I'm fundamentally knowing that he's got the tools he needs to go on and live a successful, rich life.
Right.
He's got more education to go. He's going into his junior year of high school.
Yeah.
But he is becoming educated in the way of the world. He's traveling with his dad. He's behind the camera and the microphones on all of our podcasts, flying the drones. He and I are leaving a week from today to go over to Bimini to spend a week at Ivers Angels Foundation. We'll have that whole week together. And, so in the same time, I'm giving him all the space he wants. He's got a car. He goes out and does his skateboarding. He's got his group of friends he calls the 96 Club. And there's like 5 or 6 boys that hang out together. It's beautiful to see, it's like, I tell them when I leave, just don't burn down the house, make good decisions. And I know fundamentally most of the decisions will be good. Some won't be. And I try to describe it as I set up the guardrails. I tell them, I don't care if you come back with the fenders all beat up. I just don't want you going off the cliff. Yeah. That's kind of the message that I impart to him right now.
And that's really important. And the fact that, getting that balance, giving him the space, but also being present, being there and teaching him life skills. And a conversation we can have another time, Mick, but I'm with you regards to the educational system. And it's so prehistoric. It children's foul. So
it's horrible. Yeah. But that could be another conversation because, the one thing we'll say about the state of Florida is they do have an amazing homeschooling program where I literally write the curriculum for my son. I write his transcripts. He does an annual review for his progression. But everything I do for him is accepted by university system. And I will even write his graduation diploma if I want to. So, he's not being taking out of the system per se. He's not. He's getting all the benefits of being properly educated. I'm just not letting the governmental schools do it.
Yes, yeah, understood. So I'm pleased that you're in therapy. You meet with Michael to 2 hours at a time. In the initial stage, because as I said, this is not a space that is common in terms of, unfortunately, parents do lose a child or children, but to suicide in circumstances yours is unusual. And I'm trying to think about Rick, not just the dad, but Rick the man, the early stages. What, if you can put it into words?
I can't. I mean, I can give an example. I had an interview. So Aiden died on a Wednesday morning, 21st of August. I had an interview scheduled with Laura DeBella on Friday afternoon. And I had come back from the scene and things had to happen. So there's no reason for me to be up in Auburndale at the time. I came back home with Tristan and I am like, I'm numb. I know I'm just absolutely completely mind fucked. But at the same time, I made the decision to go forward with this interview. And so what I normally do with my guests is we meet for coffee or lunch or something right before to talk about what we're going to talk about. And we're at this restaurant and Laura comes in and I've never met her before. Remarkable woman. And it's a good interview to listen to. And I think to myself, I better let her know that something's going on just because I don't know how things are going to go when we sit down in front of the camera and play into my shit. I don't want her embarrassed or wondering. So we sit down and before water served to the table, and I said, listen, Laura, before we get into anything else, I need to let you know what just happened. And I basically told her. And she looks at me and she reaches across the table, grabs both my hands. And for 10 minutes, we held eye contact and held hands and just had a moment. And that was so therapeutic. That was so freaking beautiful. And she says, we don't have to do this. I said, you know what, Laura? I really want to do this. And so we had a great interview, went great. And I'm like, yeah, see, Rick, you're strong. You got your man card in hand. You're fine. And I go home, we have dinner, and we live in Weston, west end of the county, Broward County, right on the edge of the Everglades. I got a beautiful lake behind my house. And after dinner, I walked down to the lake and the sun was setting. And I'm thinking, yeah, wow, boy, my life sure changed. And Gary, all of a sudden, I describe it as if someone just came up and sucker punched me in the gut. I went to my knees and I lost it for 45 minutes. For 45 minutes, I sat at the edge of the lake, just screaming, crying, losing it. I felt people coming out my shoulder, walking away, knowing I needed the space. And that's when I realized, holy crap, Rick, this is going to be tough. This is a tough, tough one. You've been through a lot of tough ones before. Nothing touches this. And all I can tell you is there's no coming out of it, but I feel more powerful in a way right now because it's like nothing can touch me anymore. I mean, nothing can compare, short of losing another one of my children. Yeah, that's not happening. I'm making darn sure that we're, but it is, it's such a profound realization that there's never going to be an answer, that the question of why will never be answered. You're trying to just get your head around everything that led up to that decision, that horrible decision, and everything coming on the other side of it. All I can tell you is my life has changed. And, and at this point in time, as a man and as a father, I think it's important to own this, allow this to be part of what is Rick Thomas now, this grief piece that I'll walk with and live with for the rest of my life, but not let it define me as a man either. It's a part of who and what I am. But I still have a beautiful future ahead of me. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm super healthy. I'm active. I'm involved. I've got 2 boys that I need to help navigate this crazy freaking world we live in. I've got this cool career that's coming together. I'm enjoying the crap out of it. And really, I look forward to every one of the conversations I have with the people I interview. And so it's a balancing act, right? It's like, okay, take care of Rick, take care of everything else that is around Rick, and somehow or another make it all work. Does that make sense?
All of it. So what I loved, Rick, was you say many things, but this sort of standout point for me, I've still got a beautiful life to live.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Goes back to that decision every morning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, listen, I think we're all blessed to be on this planet. When you think about what we have here, the time that we're living in right now, wow, what an opportunity we have to really see and enjoy and indulge in a world that our parents, our grandparents couldn't conceive of. Now, yeah, there's a lot of screwed up things in this world right now, and we can all agree on a lot of things that could be done better, should be done better, or some of the horrors that do happen in our space. But at the same time, the world we create around ourselves, I think we have the opportunity to make it the best of the very short period of time we have on this planet. And I don't want to basically say, okay, because Aiden killed himself, now the rest of my life is done. That wouldn't be fair to him, and it wouldn't be fair to me, and certainly wouldn't be fair to my other boys. So the best thing I could do for my children is demonstrate to them how Dad can take this and move with it.
Inspirational. And moving forward with it, does that involve working in the mental health space with regards to other people who've been affected directly or indirectly by suicide? Because I may say something controversial here, Rick, but I'm speaking.
Please do.
Growing up, I was, told by people a generation before me that anybody who committed suicide was the most selfish thing a human being could do. Now, getting older, wiser, and especially the field that I'm working in, I recognise that is not a case that we don't know, because to be through it, you can't tell the story the other side. But
no,
there's not many people who have not had what we say in the industry dark thoughts. And it must be a terrible, dark place where somebody chooses to say, I don't want to be here anymore. That's a choice made for whatever situation. And unless you've been, we cannot judge or comment. For you, how in the yachting industry, and we know that the suicide is not discriminatory, and that there's too many suicides, but particularly in the yacht industry where people that feel they can speak, it may be a different reason why they made that decision. And for you, and how you've responded to this with yourself, your boys, is there, going back to the question, is part of moving forward you using this to create that safe space within the yachting industry to prevent this going forward?
Yeah, let me speak to that. Because I could peel this onion back so many different ways, and it's all worth peeling. First of all, one of the horrible things that I've learned coming out of this, because I've had people reach out to me, is Aiden's suicide is not an isolated incident. Unfortunately, I had no idea how many parents are dealing with the suicide of their children. It's epidemic right now, Gary. It's terrifying to learn how common this is becoming, which is a wake up call all into itself. I used to think too. It was, in fact, shortly after he did. What a horrible, selfish thing you just did, Aiden. And then the more intellectual and focused time I put on this, the more reading I did, the more listening I did to others, the more I came to realize that no, something was causing him a lot of pain. Something was causing him a strong desire to end that. It wasn't that he wanted to, I don't think, leave this life so much as he just wanted whatever was going on up here to go away. And I've heard that from people who survive suicide attempts. And frequently you hear that they're so thrilled to be living on the other side of a suicide attempt that it wasn't that they wanted their life to end, they wanted their pain to end. And they're they distinctly described two different things. There was an interview with a gentleman who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Very rarely do you survive that. He survives that, and he tells the tale. As soon as he let go, he regretted it. He's like, I don't want to die. I just want this pain to go away. So that's as close as you can come to, I think, that piece of it. So that's one piece of that onion. The other piece, of course, is in the space we deal with in the wonderful world of yachting, you have young people who are basically leaving the nest, getting into a interesting, complex industry, very social industry, exposed to lifestyles and things they'll never, ever, ever be able to achieve in their life, most likely in the future. Around such a complex group of people, different nationalities, cultures, languages, and depending on the luck of the draw, what program they get dropped into is becoming, green crew. They're either embraced in a wonderful program and they're nurtured and they do well and they learn, or they come into a toxic, dangerous environment where they're abused, where they're taken advantage of, physical abuse, sexual abuse, a little bit of both, and they're isolated. They're away from everything familiar to them. They're in the small spaces with people that are strangers by and large. They can't leave. They rarely can reach out and have that conversation, so to speak. What happens when they need to go to some place on that boat to make that phone call to talk to somebody, and they're going to be overheard, or maybe it's the captain that's giving them the problem, and they're told to go to the house to make the phone call to their DPA. There's so many, like I said, so many layers there, and the industry needs to recognize and understand that the crew have in an impossible situation almost. There's no second shift, for instance. You're on 20, that boat runs 24/7. You're off shift maybe, but you're still mentally on shift. If something comes up, you got to show back up and deal with it, whatever that looks like. So for some young people and some older people, there's been a couple captains recently commit suicide. That one very close to us right here in South Florida about 5 months ago. Horrible. It's a problem, and I think awareness is a good starting point. I know when it's death, I went looking for podcasts because I think that's a great place to learn. There was in his precious few podcast resources that you can go to and get that feedback as a parent or a sibling or a spouse of somebody who has committed suicide. There's just not a lot of that out there right now. And I don't think there's anything out there specifically targeting or directing the energy towards the yachting space, the cruise space. So, I've talked to Ray, our producer, about this in the past, and at some point in time, God willing, I'd like to try to figure out how to get that voice started, because I think it's a good voice to have.
Yeah. Good, and so important for the reasons that you've just shared. And I totally agree with you. It's like people don't just get divorced overnight, do they? There's been a series, there's a builder, and people don't just wake up one day and say, I want to end my life.
Yeah. No, it's usually that's what it is. And it's a build up, and maybe that's why my situation feels so desperate and so difficult, is that I've read stories my whole life about, movies have been made about kids who have been problematic, and they get institutionalized, and they come out and they go on psychic drugs and, psychotropics, and they're trying to be helped, and then eventually they do something, they end their life, and there's the tragedy. And the parents are sitting there going, well, we tried our best. We didn't know what else to do. And that's a horrible story. There's nothing, I'm not diminishing that reality, because that happens. But in my space, and I've come to find out many, many other parents' space, you get this perception that everything's wonderful until all of a sudden it's not. And then you're left with that really hard question. Why? What perpetuated this? It's hard to say. For instance, I mentioned at the beginning of this interview that my wife, Lisa, had CF, passed away in 2018. Well, Aiden was 15 years old when she passed away. He was with her when she died. He was really close to her, just like Tristan is really close to me. So in hindsight, I look at that and go, well, that kid lost perhaps the most important human being to him when he was 15 years old, and very, as a man, as a young man,
Yeah.
very, very formative period in his time. And his brain's not fully developed. He still wasn't 21. I think 26 is when we kind of
mid-20s.
we're fully, cogently dialed in. That's why very few young men over the age of 26 go into the military. I mean, they figure it out by then. It's about they don't do big cannon fodder. Worry in that. But I look back on things like that with Aiden going, well, maybe that's been in the back of his mind for a very long time. Maybe it wasn't something so nefarious other than he had this epiphany that maybe if he did this, he'd get to be with his mom. I don't know. We start creating fantasies in our heads, don't we, about, what could have brought somebody to do such a thing. In the fact that I was with him 3 weeks before he did this, I thought, well, it was a perfect opportunity for him to come to Dad and say, hey, Dad, something's really been bothering me here, and have a conversation and the intervention maybe, but it doesn't happen. And it didn't happen for me, and it's not happening for a lot of other parents right now that are about to experience this or just experience this.
How important is that? I mean, naturally, we don't want anyone to go through any tragedy in life, particularly this is the worst. But how important is to have people who have experienced what you've experienced
I think it's the only therapy that we have as parents who have lost a child. It's truly the only real therapy that we're going to get is to be able to, as human beings, come together with another human being that's just shared the same horrible, horrible experience and say, you're not alone in this. You know, we can work through this together. You've got my phone number. You have a dark moment. You've got just a hard time you're having. You're feeling empty and you want something to fill your tanks. Let me help you fill your tank a little bit. That's how it feels to me sometimes. It feels like my tank's just completely empty and I can't find anything to fill it up. And so where I have found my best therapy have been in conversations with other parents that have lost their children. And you know, it's just real. I ran into Captain Lee from Below Deck fame a couple of nights ago. He had a wonderful message on a post that I did in memory of Aiden last September. And I walked up to him and I thanked him for this heartfelt message. And he looks at me and he says, you do realize that I lost my son last year too. He lost his son to fentanyl, which was coming off of a accident where he had been on painkillers. So not truly a suicide, but nonetheless, he lost his child, his son, his very, very most important person, tragically to a horrible, horrible malady that is affecting us here in the United States that we pretend isn't happening, but really is. And just he and I, in our conversation the other night for 20 minutes was therapy for me, and I'd like to think it was therapy for him.
Yeah. And the power of therapy, to use your word, is connection identification, because if we can't identify as much as you would like to empathize, it's limited sympathy than actual empathy.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, men, I think we tend to bottle it up. I've seen this. I got one of my very best friends. I've known him for over 50 years. Was a special forces operator in the U.S. Navy, and he struggles with PTSD right now.
Okay.
And I talked him through a downtime a couple months ago. Because we bottle it up. We're expected to be able to just shoulder it and go forward with it, and we'll be all fine. And but we're only human, and it's I don't know. Sometimes it's difficult to open up. That's why I found it so therapeutic to find this therapist that I speak with once a week, and really have the opportunity to get it out there. And he lets me talk, and he opens up some rabbit holes we can go down, and boom, let's go, baby. Let's go down that hole and see where it takes us.
And how do you find it? Because it's definitely helping you working with a man in that context. As you said, for men, it's difficult to open up. It's open up in front of another man.
Yes. I think it's because I don't know, when you got the XY chromosome, we have, no matter what, we've got a commonality in, I think, the way our mind's wired, the way we think, the way we culturally have been probably raised, with some exception, but not a lot of exception. So, when you're, mano to mano, you then allow yourself to be vulnerable. That is difficult. Most men have a hard time allowing themselves to be vulnerable. Many of us been raised to not demonstrate vulnerability. We need to be at the apex here. We can't be, we can't, we got to be the predator, not the prey. And the vulnerability is kind of really when you start to heal, when you start to find some release, or you allow other ideas, other influences to come in. And it's in the vulnerable that I think you find the best healing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, most certainly. And it's interesting when men open up and cry, which they do, it's a safe space, they'll apologize, or they'll say, I'm sorry. Why to do this? I know. The female cries is more natural, but I don't often say, don't apologize, there's no need. It's almost like, I shouldn't be doing this.
But you should be. but you should be, right? And it's funny because I've given up on trying. What I mean by that is, um, I'll give a talk and all of a sudden tears will come, and I didn't know it was coming, and I didn't feel it coming. All of a sudden it's there, and I used to try to just hold that shit back, and it's like, no, now it's kind of like I'll just let them roll as I'm talking. It's like if you're seeing tears, it's because that's what's happening, and there's something has been touched that's caused that response, and that's good. It's kind of like that when that happens, it it's cleansing in a way.
We'll start closing towards the end. What's not helpful? Because I can imagine, especially coming from Britain, we're very conscious about not.
Dip upper lip.
Yeah. And it's very difficult to know what to say or what not to say. What's not helpful for people who may know of somebody in a situation, want to help, but a fear added to the issue?
What's not helpful is pretending it never happened. To treat it like it was a third rail that you don't want to touch because you don't want to upset me or bring up bad memories or whatever. The most helpful thing, if you know the individual has had this experience, is to say, how are you doing? I think about Aiden, and I think about your circumstances, and I just want to let you know that I'm here if you want to talk at any time. I know it's got to be a very difficult thing for you. Give me the opportunity to either say thank you very much and move on, or yeah, if you're serious about that, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it, because it really is in the human connection. It's recognizing when people say his name, it's reminding me that he lived and that he was important. It's when they avoid the subject, it's like he never existed. That's hard for me, because he did exist, and he's part of me, always will be. So I carry him everywhere I go, and when his name is invoked, when people recognize that I've gone through a very difficult time, and I'm still and probably always will be dealing with this grief, it's therapy when they do. So that's the best thing. I would say that I've talked to other people in this space, they say the same thing. Don't pretend it didn't happen, because it happened.
When you said Ada lived, and it's by not speaking about, it's denying that he lived. Yeah, part of you, he lived.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
You're a brave man, courageous man, is it? I say that definitely not as flattery, so I hope you're not receiving it that way. And people could have chosen a different response, not because they necessarily wanted to, because they just didn't have the courage to continue with life. Despite having two sons that's going to be very dependent, not in terms of being children, but dependent on you emotionally, physically. What's going on in your world is completely rocked. And choosing each day what type of day you want to have. That doesn't mean you don't have your moments, but it's embracing those moments and saying you've still got a good life, wasn't it, a beautiful life to live.
Yes.
So, just before we end, have you got any ideas for August the 21st? It's not too far away.
Yeah, well, it starts August 13th, which is his birthday.
Okay.
Everybody tells me, Rick, you're getting ready for the toughest time. The anniversary is difficult. And they say, there's two difficult days in the year, the birthday and the death day. And in my case, they're exactly a week apart from each other. Lucky me. So I plan to stay connected, but disconnect, if that makes sense, in the first, and actually between August 13th and August 21st. I'm going to be, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it to Aiden. It's going to be for him, whether I just take my boat out to sea and spend a few days on the ocean, or who knows what else, maybe go find someone to take me down a rabbit hole of some ayahuasca. I don't know. But point being, I'm going to focus on him and myself and my other two boys in that period of time, because it's dark and it's bright at the same time.
Yeah.
It's both sides of the coin, the yin and the yang. And in coming out of that, I'm going to see what the world brings me. I really do feel that these conversations, Gary, we're having right now are helpful to anybody that is dealing with suicide in their life, whether you're the parent or the sibling. I don't think it really matters. I think the traumatic experience, and that's what it is. It's a traumatic experience. Your world changed and was completely out of your control, and it will never be the same again. And that is the mind screw that is so difficult, is understanding what grief looks like. And, there is the reality. It's, you live with grief, you make peace with grief. The grief came from the love. And maybe that's the biggest gift I've got, is the grief came from the love. And if you want to really get your head into this, listen to Cat Stevens' song, Father and Son, which I did shortly after his death. And it took me to my knees for the second time. And I played it. I had a friend of mine play it at his memorial, and it was at the same time most beautiful, most profound thing. And that's kind of owning the grief. It's owning the love.
Yeah. I mean, Ria said, Rick, that you are, a leader. How people see leadership as, the flashy lights out there speaking, but that's a test of a leader.
No, thank you. I don't know. I try to keep my ego out of this. I try to just try to be real, and I think that being genuine is attractive and helps people feel comfortable, safe, and having conversations. And I think that's what we need: the safety, the comfort of having difficult conversations that can help people understand a little bit more than they knew before. And maybe at the end of this hour we spent together, people come out of this hearing this conversation going, wow, I didn't realize the effect that an event like this in someone's life can have, and what really is helpful versus what's not helpful.
Final question, Rick.
Sure.
Has it altered your view of the world?
No, I think the world's still a freaking beautiful place that is a little bit of everything. I just think for some reason the path that I was given was going to be peppered with real world experiences not everybody gets, and thank God not everybody gets them. But listen, I've got so many wonderful experiences we could talk about. That I lived a very rich life, not wealthy rich, but full living rich. With wonderful relationships and incredible experiences, and I've seen the world. So no, it's a great world. It's just terribly unfortunate that I've got a child that decided that he didn't want to spend the rest of his potential life in this world. And that's the sad part. This world's so cool. There's so much of this world I would want him. And he's not going to get to see it. Tristan will. And my older son, Rip, has and will. And there you go. Great world.
I'll use that word again, inspiration. And as you were summing up, Rick, what came to my mind is that obviously you're a dad to Rick and to Tristan, but you're still being a dad to Aiden.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And still a father of three, being the best man you can. And what an example.
Right. Well, people ask me how many kids I have. I say 3. And then it's, then it's that if the conversation continues, then eventually it comes out that I have 2 living. But no, I'm a father of 3 boys, and I'm a proud father of 3 boys.
And Aiden was blessed to have you as his dad.
Thank you. I'd like to believe that.
So when you're over Mallorca, we've got to do this intro.
Again?
When are you over in Mallorca, Palma, Mallorca?
Oh my goodness! The next trip across is going to be in September for the Monaco Yacht Show. I love to get back to Majorca. I've got friends on that island. Now I've got one more friend on that island. Um, uh, it has to happen. I'll talk to my travel sponsor and see if I can't get them to help me get over there sooner. What about you? Are you coming to Florida anytime in the near future?
I have to take my girls because they complained that when I taught them they were too young to remember it. Which any logic was, but not the younger team.
It's love it. Well, we will get together in person one day, Gary. This is too good. And I love bro talk. I think this is the kind of conversations men need to have with each other. And I love what you're doing in your space. I think it's a gift. And I'm thrilled that we're having this conversation finally.
Yeah. Yeah, be real insightful listening to you chat about your experience and the will to move forward. But that's the will to move forward. And you said, going back to what you said at the beginning, we could control the start of our day, but we don't know what the mind's going to throw at us, good, bad, and ugly. But it's still for you a beautiful place.
It's a beautiful place, and I've got future plans, brother. We're gonna keep things going for sure. So hopefully we cross paths, and anybody else listening to this show, I hope we cross paths and have conversations. And I'm happy to talk about my world, and I'd love to hear about yours.
And talk about worlds. We've always wanted Bro Talk to be a safe space where we'd have real conversation about real life experiences, and it doesn't come much more real than this. If any of you have been affected by this, positive, negatively, and want to understand more, there'll be links at the end of this episode. And also, Rick, if anybody wants to contact you directly, would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely. With gratitude. I would love to have anybody that would like to connect with me directly to do so. For whatever intention. I think the purpose right now is good communication. And if I can bring anything to the conversation, I'm happy to do it.
Right. So we'll have your contact details at the end.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you for listening to Bro Talk.